Check, 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 check. Hello, check. Perfect. All right. Solo podcast time. All right, welcome everyone to a different episode of Making the Call. We're recording this on a Monday night, which you probably know the Stars are playing the Seattle Kraken in Game 7 of the second round on Monday night at 7 o'clock. So we all just wanted to lock in and watch that game. If we were gonna try and do a regular podcast, we were gonna not be able to do it until like 7:15, 7:30. So we were going to miss a lot of the games. So I said, don't worry, guys. I'll do a quick little solo podcast. That way we can all lock in for Game 7. You already know the outcome of the game by the time you're listening to this. So hopefully we did it for a good reason and the Stars were able to win Game 7. But we're going to talk about that at the end of the podcast. But I got a solo podcast for you this week. I've got a few topics I'm just going to run through. We'll see how long it goes. We'll see how long I can just ramble on. I just started jotting down my thoughts, and then I looked up and had 3 pages of notes. So here we go. Got to start with the Texas Rangers. They have been the topic that has been outside of the Stars in their Stanley Cup playoff run. The Rangers have been the top of my interest as far as sports goes recently. I just cannot. I can't keep away from them. I can't not watch them. I've been watching almost every game. And when I'm not watching it, I'm constantly, refreshing Gamecast to see what's going on. The Rangers have been so much fun. And now we are a quarter of the way through the season. 25% of the season is done. The Rangers have played 40 games. They are 25-15. They have a plus 97 run differential, which is second behind only the Tampa Bay Rays, who have just been a juggernaut all season long. One fun little tidbit about this. The combined run differential of the next 3 American League teams, the Twins, the Orioles, and the Astros, is 97. And the Rangers have a 97 run differential all by themselves. If you would have told me going into this season that the Rangers would have started off this hot and this strong, despite missing Corey Seager for a month, and they're going to end up missing Jacob deGrom for probably a month, I would have thought you were crazy. I would have thought that you were playing MLB The Show, and that's where it was coming from. The Rangers have been unbelievable. They've led the division from the start of the season up until this point. They started off with a division lead, and they have not given it up for a second. After deGrom went down with the injury, the rest of the rotation, they've stepped up. And I think that's a really, really good reason why you can believe in this team, why you can look at this start 25% of the way through and say, you know what? I think that this Rangers team is for real. I think they're good. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I don't think it's too early to be making those sweeping declarations. And I'm going to talk about a few reasons why, starting off with the rest of the rotation after deGrom went down. So the Rangers have played 14 games since deGrom left in that start against the Yankees on April 28th. The starters have thrown 9 quality starts in those 14 games. And that is coming from Nathan Eovaldi, Martin Perez, John Gray, Andrew Heaney, and Dane Dunning stepping in for deGrom. Speaking of Eovaldi, he has made 3 starts since deGrom went down. He has not allowed a run and has extended his shutout streak to 28 2/3 innings. This stat isn't just since the deGrom injury, but Andrew Heaney, if you exclude his first start of the season, which if you'll remember, his first start of the season, he gave up like 7 earned runs. It wasn't good. So if you just say, okay, that was, opening week jitters, you're just going to write it off to that. That was, if I remember correctly, it was against the Orioles. The Rangers dropped 2 out of 3 in that 3-game set against the Orioles. So if you exclude that first start for Heaney, he has a 3.43 ERA and 39 1/3 innings pitched with a with 180 opponents batting average, which is crazy. Dirk, shut up. Let's try this again, YouTube. Check, check, check. This next stat isn't just since the DeGrom injury, but I want to talk about Andrew Heaney because if you exclude his first start of the season, where he gave up I want to say it was 7 earned runs over 4 innings or something, it wasn't a good start. So if you throw that first start of the season out the window, he has a 3.43 ERA over 39 and a third innings pitched with a .18 opponent's batting average. Opponents are batting 180 against him over that stretch. If you exclude that first start, he has been fantastic, and I guess you would say Dunning is the last guy in your rotation now, filling in for DeGrom, but Heaney came into the season being your 5th starter, and you're getting this kind of production out of him. I think that speaks to one of two things. One, Chris Young and this front office did a great job identifying which pitchers to go out and get this offseason. There was a lot of talk about, and a lot of this has come from me. The Rangers historically have not developed pitching well. They can't develop a pitcher to save their life. So this offseason they said, okay, we're going to go out and buy a rotation, and that's what they did. They paid for Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney. They got John Gray last offseason. They brought Martin Perez back last offseason. So their entire rotation is through the free agent market. And to get that kind of production from your 5th starter speaks to Chris Young's ability to identify which pitchers, and also speaks to Mike Maddox and his ability and his coaching staff's ability to get the most out of their guys. Speaking of getting the most out of your guys, Dane Dunning has made 2 starts in place of Jacob deGrom. He's thrown 11 innings, only giving up 2 runs. John Gray has made 3 starts since the deGrom injury and has a 2.21 ERA over 20 and a third innings. So, and Martin Perez, he has struggled the last 2 games, but outside of those 2 starts, he, for the most part, has been a quality start machine going back to pretty much all of last season when he was a lone all-star for this ball club. So the other guys are stepping up, which is what you want to see. When your big-time ace goes down, you want to see the other guys pick up more of the slack. And DeGrom goes down on April 28th. April 29th, I was at that game. That was when he threw that complete game shutout against the Yankees. Literally the very next day, the day whenever we got word that DeGrom was going down onto the injured list. And that's what you want to see, and it's been really cool to see. Outside of the pitching, the offense, we've talked about it a lot already. I'm running out of things to say. They just continue to mash. They still lead all of baseball in runs per game. In RBI rankings, the Rangers have 3 players in the top 10 in all of baseball. Adolis Garcia is 1st in RBIs. Marcus Semien is 5th, and Jonah Heim is 10th. All of baseball, not just the American League. The Rangers have 3 players in the top 10, which is I can't believe it. Jonah Heim is batting 6th, 7th in the lineup, and he's 10th in RBIs. The Rangers as a team are 5th in batting average, 4th in on-base percentage, and 4th in OPS. And again, this is in all of baseball, not just the American League. Since Corey Seager, we talked about, so going back to the pitching, we talked about when one of your guys goes down, you need everyone else to step up and do a little bit more. Corey Seager, you would have gone into this year saying he was your best player. He has the biggest contract. He's making the most money per year as a non-pitcher. And you would have said, okay, Corey Seager is your guy. Well, he's been out for almost a month with a hamstring injury. I was listening to Chris Young's interview this afternoon on 105.3 The Fan, and he was saying that His Corey Seager's return from the injured list is imminent. He said he might get activated on Tuesday. If not Tuesday, then later this week. So he's about to be back. But since he went down with that hamstring injury almost a month ago, the Rangers have 5 players with an OPS over 800. That's Marcus Semien, Jonah Heim, Ezekiel Duran, Adolis Garcia, and Nathaniel Lowe. You want to talk about guys stepping up when their name is called. Ezekiel Duran has been putting up video game numbers. And he's the guy who has stepped up. He's the guy who you've called up to play in the place of your star. And he's playing for Corey Seager. He was not a starter. He wasn't playing very often before Seager went down. And his name got called. And he has forced his way into this lineup to where even when Seager comes back, you're still going to be seeing Duran. Whether he is DHing, whether he's playing left field, you can't keep him out of this lineup right now. Not with the production that he's having. I mentioned that stat, 5 players with an OPS over 800. There's 2 guys who just barely missed the cut. Robbie Grossman, and he's at 788, and Leody Taveras is at 773. Grossman, I have not been a huge fan of, but recently it's hard to deny. Like early on in the season, I was pretty frustrated with him. I'm like, man, I'd rather be seeing some of these younger guys get these plate appearances, but you can't keep Grossman out of the lineup right now. What he's been doing, he has been on a tear recently. And Taveras, one of the questions about him whenever he got up to the big leagues was, is he going to be able to hit at a major league level? And that was kind of a question about Taveras, and there was a question about Bubba Thompson. We've seen Taveras answer that a lot better than Bubba Thompson has so far this season. I still have hope for Thompson, but it's kind of yet to be seen. But Leody Taveras has been great. Grossman has been great as well. Rangers, I can't stop watching Rangers baseball this season. I'm tuning into every game. If it's a day game and I'm at work, I pull it up on my phone, have it in the background. It's just this season has been so much fun, and I think if Tampa Bay hadn't gotten off to just a historic start that they have, then I think the Rangers would be the story in baseball this season. And I think you're going to start to see more and more people start to talk about them because we're a month in. They have a 4-game lead over Houston, and 25-15. They're on pace to win 102 baseball games. Now, they're probably not going to go 102-60, but that's the pace that they're on a quarter of the way through. And that's missing Corey Seager for most of that time and DeGrom for most of that time. So I think it's okay to be bullish on the Rangers. I think it's okay to start allowing yourself to get excited because we all thought that if everything broke right, that this team could make it to the playoffs this year. I don't think anyone really expected them to win the division or compete for the division, but quarter of the way through, they've got a 4-game lead. You've got to expect Houston to bounce back at some point, but we don't apologize for wins in baseball. I know there's a lot of games. You stack up the wins where you can, and that's what the Rangers have done. They've set themselves up nicely for the rest of the year. Once you get Seager back, once you get DeGrom back, I mean, the fact that you're going to add in Corey Seager to this lineup, which Corey Seager, before he got hurt, he was batting over 1,000 OPS. You're just going to add him back to this lineup. And Rangers fans, if you're not already, casual fans, if you're not already on the bandwagon, hop on now. You still got 75% of the season left. They're starting a 3-game series Monday night against the Atlanta Braves. Cody Bradford making his major league debut Monday. That's going to be really cool to see. He's a local kid. He went to Aledo. He went to Baylor at college. He is your prototypical soft-throwing lefty who just places his pitches right where he needs them. He doesn't throw hard. His fastball sits in the low 90s, but he has 4 different pitches that he can throw for a strike. He uses all of them. He uses the top of the zone to elevate as a strikeout pitch. Watch him. I hope he does well against Atlanta. Atlanta has the same record as Texas, so they've gotten off to a great start. They're one of the favorites to come out of the National League, so he's going to have quite the test for his debut. But I trust Mike Maddox. I trust Jonah Heim to call a good game, and I'm excited to see what the young guy can do. All right, moving on from the Rangers. Mavs draft lottery. So by the time you're listening to this, it's going to be tonight, 7 p.m. Central Time on ESPN, the NBA draft lottery. The Mavs have the 10th best odds, which means that they have a 13.9% chance of moving into the top 4. They have a 3% chance of landing the first overall pick. Their pick is top 10 protected, so if it falls to 11, the pick will be conveyed to the New York Knicks. This is the last asset of the Porzingis trade. Since it's top 10 protected, there is a 23.7% chance of them falling down to 11 and that pick going to the Knicks. So let's say, because obviously the most likely scenario is the Mavs stay at 10, right? If they only have a 13.9% chance of moving into the top 4, and they've got a 23.7% chance of it falling to 11, their most likely outcome is that they sit right at 10. And if they stay at 10, I think I want them to trade the pick. I know. Andrew, at some point, you got to stop trading draft picks. You got to start drafting players and trying to develop talent. But I don't know, guys. I've been looking at mock drafts. I've been looking at big boards. And I just don't think that the player who's going to be available at 10 is worth keeping that pick versus what you could get for that player or get for that pick in a trade. You got to think about this. Teams love the uncertainties of draft picks. You're always going to be able to flip a pick for kind of a better proven veteran. I wrote about this in the article I wrote about the Cowboys a couple weeks ago. That, it's not the exact same because you've got 7 rounds in the NFL, but, trading a draft pick for a proven veteran, I think is a smart move if you think that you can be a contender, which, newsflash Mavs fans, as long as you've got 77 suiting up in a Mavs jersey, the team has to act as if it's going to be a contender every year. That's just what you do. When you have a top 5 guy, that's how you conduct yourself. Look at how... Look at the Bucks, for example. They lose in the first round. They're not going to retool with Giannis. Look at Philly. Philly and we're going to talk about Philly in a little bit. They just lost in the second round in a pretty rough fashion against the Celtics. All these questions and marks about James Harden or Doc Rivers or how does Philly build around Embiid? Philly's not going to take a step back. No, they're going to build around Joel Embiid. The Mavs they have an obligation to build around Luka. And if you have the 10th pick, I would want them to move that pick, try and trade it for someone who can come in and produce right away, because rookies, it's hard to expect a rookie to perform in the playoffs in their first year. We had Matt on, what was it, a month ago or whatever, to talk about the Kings and their first round matchup against the Warriors. Keegan Murray came on late in that series, but first 4 games of the series, Keegan Murray was pretty much a no-show for Sacramento because it was his first taste of playoff basketball, and it's in his first year in the league. And I think it's hard to expect a rookie just to come in and produce right away, and that's why I would want to move that pick. And we're gonna get to other scenarios in a second, but if they're staying at 10, I want them to move it. That's where I fall on that. Now, let's say for the first time in franchise history, the Mavs move up. They actually move up in the draft, which, again, they've never done. Anytime the Mavs have been in the lottery, they have either stayed at their exact same spot or they've moved down. If you'll remember, 2018 draft, the year that they selected Luka, the Mavs had the 3rd best odds, and they fell down to 5. So then they had to trade a future first to move back up to 3 to select Luka. That's the kind of luck that the Mavs have had in the draft lottery. But let's say you're being the optimist. You're saying, well, Andrew, that means they're due. They've gone their entire franchise. They've never moved up in the draft. Surely that can't go on forever. This has to be the year, right? Any year with Wembanyama, this is the year to move up, right? Well, I mentioned they have a 3% chance of landing in the first overall pick. This won't shock you, but if they move up to 1, don't trade that pick, Mark Cuban. Don't trade that pick, Nico Harrison. You draft Victor Wembanyama. He's the exception. He's the best prospect we've seen since LeBron. You take him. Obviously, no brainer. But what if the Mavs move up to 4? Because, yes, they could move up to 2. 2, I think, would be really interesting because Scoot Henderson will be the best player available there. But do you draft another guard if you're hell-bent on bringing back Kyrie. Maybe if you've got Scoot, then you don't bring back Kyrie. Maybe that's the path that they take. But let's say the Mavs move up to 4. Would I want them to trade the pick then? I think not. I think if you're the Mavs, I think if you move up into the top 4, which if you don't know how the lottery works, that's their only option. It's the lottery is for the top 4, and then after that they rank everyone in order of worst record. So they could either move up to 1, 2, 3, or 4, or they stay at 10, or they fall down to 11. They can't get the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th pick, 9th. So if they move up to 4, I think you keep the pick. And the guy that I want, and I've talked about him on the podcast already, Jarris Walker out of Houston. If you've got the 4th pick, he's likely going to be there. I think a lot of people have him as like the 6th top prospect. Most big boards got, Wembanyama 1, Scoot Henderson 2, Brandon Miller, the forward from Alabama at 3, and then the 2 Thompson twins, Amon and Oscar Thompson from Overtime Elite, going 4 and 5. But I think, those two guys are guards. I think you go with Walker. Sorry. He's a power forward out of Houston. He is like your prototypical, just like defensive stopper, like wing defender. And I think he's got more offensive upside than what he was able to show at Houston. And he'd be my pick if the Mavs were 4th. I wouldn't want them to trade the pick. I'm going on the record now. The only way I would want them to trade the pick is if they stay at 10. If they move up into the top 4, I think you stay there and you take the best player. Maybe you like Brandon Miller more than Scoot Henderson. You take him at 2. If you're at 3, maybe you can still get Brandon Miller. But I think if you're at 4, the guy that I want is Jarris Walker. He's 6'8", 220 pounds. He averaged 14 and 9 this last year at Houston. And like I said, I think he has more offensive upside than what he showed. But he comes in and he's immediately your best defender. Whether or not you bring back Bullock, whether or not you bring back Josh Green, Walker would be your best defender. And so he'd be my pick there. So yeah, we'll see how the lottery goes. Like I said, it's tonight, 7 p.m. Central on ESPN. Fingers crossed, say your prayers to the basketball gods that, the Mavs are due. Surely they move up, right? Like the Mavs fan in me, the troubled DFW sports fan in me already has it in my mind that they're going to slide down to 11 because that's just how these things go. But maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. One more thing on the Mavs, though. I've seen this take a lot on Twitter, and I want our listeners to be smarter than this. Don't buy into this fake news, to these bogus narratives. And if you've seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. But there's been this talking point about how the Mavs they tanked their way out of the playoffs at the end of the year. And, they punted on those final 2 games, and it was a disgrace to the game. It was a slap to the face to Adam Silver for the play-in tournament, and the Mavs should be punished because of what they did. Okay, so 2 things. Number 1, I have not heard the same criticism for Portland, who shut Dame down a month before the season ended. They were still technically in the play-in. They were like only 3 games out of the play-in, and they shut Dame down. I didn't see any calls for them to forfeit their pick or to be punished by the league or any fines or anything. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, the Mavs could have won both of those games and still missed the playoffs. They didn't control their own destiny. That's why they did what they did. They could have won their final 2 games. They would have needed Oklahoma City to lose one of their final 2 games, which they did not. They won both of them. So the Mavs could have played all their guys, those final 2 games of the season. They could have played Luka. They could have played Kyrie, everyone. And they would have still missed the play-in, and they would have had the 11th best odds in the lottery. So the likely scenario is that they would have conveyed their pick to New York. If those are the facts, you can't in your right mind criticize the Mavs for what they did. It was the smart decision then. It's still the smart decision. I replied to a guy on Twitter yesterday Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up now is because this narrative has kind of been brought back up because the Lakers were a play-in team and they're in the conference finals. The Miami Heat were a play-in team and they're in the conference finals now. I'm sorry, you can't look at the Lakers and the Heat and think the Mavs down the stretch were playing anywhere close to how those two teams have been playing. I'm sorry, you can't. The Mavs lost back-to-back games to the Charlotte Hornets. The Lakers were in a play-in because of how their season started. After the deadline, when they traded Russ and those picks and they got in Vanderbilt and everyone else, like that's why they were good down the stretch. No one would look at those three teams, the Lakers, the Heat, and the Mavs, and think that the Mavs were on the same level as those other two teams with how the Mavs were playing down the stretch. So anyways, this guy tweeted out, I'm not even going to mention him. It's not worth mentioning. Like, his name's not even worth uttering on this podcast. He said the Mavs had a chance to qualify for the play-in tournament in the final week of the regular season. Instead of competing, they tanked and sat out all their starters. Last night, two teams that participated in the play-in tournament advanced to the conference finals. Again, they had a chance to qualify for the play-in tournament, and then they lost two games that they were trying to win against the Charlotte Hornets. At that point, when they no longer controlled their destiny, that's when they punted. It was the right decision then. It's still the right decision, regardless on if the Lakers win the title or not, and I stand by that. All right, we've got a few more topics to hit, but before we do, I got to tell you about our friends over at Liquid IV. Summer's here. The weather's heating up. You're going to be doing more, outdoor activities. I've been trying to get back into golf, and if I'm out on the golf course, I'm playing 18 holes. I can't be sitting there chugging water. I'm going to have to take a million bathroom breaks. No, I'm going to get one water bottle. I'm going to fill it up with Liquid IV, and I'm going to be good for all 18 because Liquid IV hydrates you twice as fast as water alone. It has 3 times the electrolytes as traditional sports drinks. So that's my pick. I don't go and get, you can fill in the blank on, whatever sports drink that maybe you drank in the past. Go try Liquid IV. It tastes better. It has 3 times the electrolytes. It has it has a fraction of the sugar. It's delicious. It's my go-to. I've tried a bunch of different flavors. They're all great. You can go try Liquid IV today. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MTC at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order, plus free shipping, when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MTC at liquidiv.com. All right, more topics. NBA playoffs. The 76ers, they lost in the second round in Game 7 to the Boston Celtics. And my question here is it okay to criticize Embiid now? Is that okay? Is that allowed? Because I feel like the MVP discussion got so nasty this year. Everyone trying to will Embiid into winning his MVP that. And I've felt this way for a few seasons now. Of all the superstars, Embiid, I think, has gotten more passes than anyone. In his career, he's never made it out of the second round. He's had, at the time, he had a couple seasons with an all-star Ben Simmons. He's now had a season with an all-star in James Harden. And he has Tyrese Maxey. And he had Jimmy Butler, for a year. And he's had quality teammates, but when you're the guy, you're supposed to, Embiid should have made the conference finals by now. Luka made conference finals last year. Giannis has won a title. Jokic is now in his second conference finals. So all that talk about Embiid or Jokic, it's Jokic for me, and it's I try not to say this when it's not true, but it's truly not even close. I used to like Embiid, but I don't know. I've kind of soured on him recently. He's whined for 3 years about the MVP award, which, dude, the MVP, we don't hang banners for MVP awards. We hang banners for championships. But that's all he's cared about for 3 years. He clearly wore himself out in the regular season trying to win the MVP this year. And you saw it. In the regular season, He had 33. He averaged 33.1 points per game in the playoffs this year. He averaged 23.7 points per game in the playoffs. That drop of 9.4 points is the largest by that year's MVP in NBA history. This comes from ESPN Stats and Info. I saw another stat that Joel Embiid is now the first ever MVP who has never been to the conference finals in his career in NBA history. Every other MVP in NBA history has been in the conference finals in their career. Embiid's now the only one who has not. So I want voters to remember that when we're going through this whole charade next year. And I'm not sure where Philly goes from here. There's a lot of talk that Harden's leaving. Maybe he goes to Houston. There was reports Monday that maybe he goes to Phoenix. I don't know, but Philly's going to be a very interesting team to watch this summer. And speaking of teams that are going to be interesting to watch this summer, the Warriors lose in round 2 to the LA Lakers. My question here is the Warriors run over? Because I kind of think it is. I'm expecting big changes to this roster this summer. Jordan Poole, his 4-year, $128 million, I can't even say it without laughing, 4-year, $128 million contract kicks in this next season, and he was borderline unplayable in the playoffs this year. Klay Thompson has one more year, $43 million left on his contract, and he looked like a shell of himself in the series against the Lakers. Draymond Green has a $27 million player option that he could pick up, but if Golden State won't give him an extension, does he opt out of that and leave to go to the Lakers or somewhere else and get a longer-term deal? I think one of the things that I feel pretty confident in, those 3 players that I mentioned, Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, one of those 3 is not wearing a Warriors jersey next year. Maybe 2 of them. And then you've got the question of, okay, how do you build around Steph after some of these players depart? Because this team wasn't a championship contender this year. They won it last year off of, just an unbelievable Steph run in the playoffs and Wiggins being your second best player. You'd like to think that he returns to that level next year, but man, Klay Thompson clearly looks like he's in the back end of his career. Jordan Poole looks like a mistake to give him that contract. So I don't know where the Warriors go from here. I think you're going to see some guys get moved. There's a lot of talk that their GM might be out the door. So I think the landscape in the West is going to get shaken up quite a bit. All right. 2 teams that are still in the playoffs in the West. So the Lakers. This pains me to say, but I'm starting to accept the fact that the Lakers might win the title this year, and I'm officially worried. For those new to the show, I'm a bona fide Lakers hater. I always have been. However, they've looked way too comfortable in that series against the Warriors. And with LeBron and AD, I think they at least have the size to try and deal with Jokic. I don't know how successful they're going to be, but that's, Lakers versus the Warriors. If I'm Denver, I would much rather face Golden State. And I think the Lakers could win the title, and that scares me. It really does. LeBron might be getting his 5th ring, and it's crazy because this team was dead in the water. They traded Russell Westbrook and one of their picks, not even both of them, one of their picks, completely overturned their depth. And so far, knock on wood if you're a Lakers fan, but for the most part, AD and LeBron have been healthy, which was not a good bet going into the playoffs, but halfway through, they have been. We'll see how the conference finals go against Denver. And speaking of Denver is my pick at the beginning of the playoffs, and I'm sticking to it. I know I just said, the Lakers could win the title, but Denver, I think, is still the best team left out of the 4, if you count the 2 teams in the East. Denver is just, they waxed Phoenix. Like that, Jokic, he took a page out of Luka's notebook and how to take care of Phoenix in an elimination game in Phoenix, because that game 6 looked eerily similar to game 7 last year between Dallas and Phoenix. And Jokic he just looks unstoppable right now. Denver is just so much fun to watch. When he's on the court, it just feels like Denver always gets the look that they want. Like they never feel just out of place on offense. They're either getting a good look 3, they're getting an open layup or dunk, or you're getting the awkward, off-balance Jokic floater that I feel like goes in 10 times out of 10. Denver's still my pick. They're the team to beat, I think, and I feel like they were slept on a lot this season. I think they're getting their recognition now as getting to the conference finals. And my official pick for this season, for this series, I'm going Nuggets in 7. I think they close it out at home in 7, and it's going to be a back and forth series. It's going to depend on health, as all these series do, but I'm sticking with Denver. All right. Speaking of teams that provided little resistance against Denver, let's talk Phoenix. Phoenix appears to be the latest team that I think is suffering from new owner syndrome. New owner Matt Ishbia fired head coach Monty Williams after the loss to the Nuggets. And I'm sorry, but did anyone actually think Monty Williams was a problem? Ayton's been checked out since he got his second contract, which, I mean, in his defense, he kind of told us what happened. I'm going back to a quote. This is from an Ian Begley article on June 20th, 2018, before the NBA draft. DeAndre Ayton was asked Wednesday to define what success in the NBA looks like to him. The quote starts, "Definitely getting my second contract. That's my success." He's played like that. He got his second contract. He got that rookie extension from Phoenix, and he's been a shell of himself. I want you to do something. Go back and watch Phoenix in the finals from 2021 against Milwaukee. It looks like a different player. You literally, you could put a different name on the back of that jersey, and you couldn't convince me that they were the same player. Watching him in that Milwaukee series in the finals only 2 years ago, compared to him now, it's clearly he's checked out. Clearly something's not working. They're likely going to trade him. They've got other things that they got to worry about too. They traded all their depth for Kevin Durant. And then after an old Chris Paul got hurt, they were relying on Campaign to be their starting point guard, which is not a recipe for success in the playoffs. And I know they traded for Kevin Durant. They immediately became the betting odds favorite to win the title. And I think it's true. The NBA is a stars league, but you can't win a championship with only a couple stars and nothing else. Mavs fans, you don't need convincing of that. You need depth to win in May and June. You can't just have 2 superstars and nothing else, and Phoenix is just the latest example of that. So expect crazy moves from them with their new owner, Matt Ishbia. You're gonna be seeing lots of Woj tweets about the Phoenix Suns this offseason. All right. Moving on from the playoffs, I got one more NBA topic that I got to talk about. Yep, you guessed it, Ja Morant. So he spent 72 hours at a rehab facility in Florida, and apparently that didn't have a lasting effect on him. Is anyone surprised? Really? So to fill anyone in not aware, Ja Morant was on an Instagram Live over the weekend, riding in a car, waving a pistol around. The NBA is currently investigating it and is said to be considering a lengthy suspension for Morant. You want to hear my idea? Regardless of what the suspension is going to be, which I think the minimum is going to be 30 games. I think there's a chance he's suspended for half the year. I think there's a chance he's suspended for the entire year. And my idea is, if you're Memphis, I think you trade him. Really. And I'm not trying to overreact here. I think you cut bait while you can. His value might be depleted from where it was 12 months ago, but I think his value around the league is only going to decline from here. It's not going to go up. Until he proves that these issues are in the past, which they keep happening. This isn't a single occurrence. This is who he is. And if you're Memphis, you want to keep dealing with this. If you're Memphis, you have this young team that you feel like can win a title. And you've got a superstar who's acting like a knucklehead. How much more of this can you put up with if you're Memphis? And I think from a basketball standpoint, just removing all the off-the-court stuff, I don't think you can win a title with Ja Morant as your best player. I don't. I haven't been a big fan of his. It's well documented on this podcast. And if he's your best player, I don't think that you can win a championship. He hasn't proved himself as a shooter despite his obsession with firearms. He's a career 32% three-point shooter, never having a season over 35%. He's also an at-best league average defender. And if I'm Memphis, I'm seeing what kind of package you can get for him. Some ideas that I've got for it. This is not including, draft picks that probably would need to be added from one side or the other. But just looking at like a comparable player from a talent standpoint and trying to get the money to fit. So I came up with 3. Let me know. You can, tweet me or whatever. You can, let me know in Substack or whatever what you think about these. So I've got 3 of them. First up, Damian Lillard and Shaedon Sharpe for Ja Morant and Luke Kennard. So if you're Memphis, cut bait with Ja Morant, you get an older Damian Lillard who desperately needs to win a title. And if you're Damian Lillard, you get to come in, you get to be the point guard. You're getting paired up with Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams, and this nice young nucleus that Memphis has. And you get to be the guy. And I think that would be a slam dunk for Memphis. And then if you're Ja Morant, you get to go just, screw around in Portland. No attention on you. And if you want to act like a knucklehead, go do it in Portland. Be my guest. You're not going to be a contender. You get to, you can have your 5 exciting dunks a game, and then you can go hang out waving guns all over the place. All right, next one. Ja Morant and Brandon Clark for Paul George. So staying in the West, Clippers, they try to get off of this whole Paul George and Kawhi Leonard duo that clearly, they just can't stay healthy and they can't be relied on. But I think if you're the Clippers, you probably say, well, if we get Morant in here, he gets to carry a lot of the ball handling responsibilities. Pair him up with Kawhi. Kawhi as a defender can offset some of the deficiencies that Morant has as a defender. And you get Brandon Clark. I think it makes sense for the Clippers. And then if you're Memphis, Paul George on that Memphis team, you would have wing defenders all over the place. You'd have ball handling all over the place. You'd have shooting from all 3 levels by multiple players on your team. And I think a trio of PG, Desmond Bane, and Triple J, I think you could win a title with that. And then last one, Mikal Bridges and Nick Claxton for Ja Morant. So Bridges gets traded again. And this is kind of similar to Portland, where Morant gets to go to Brooklyn. He gets to hang out in the exciting nightlife of New York City, and he never gets talked about. So he gets to collect his checks. He gets to be the face for, a secondary franchise, and that's in that town. And he gets to live it up in New York. And then if you're Memphis, you get Mikal Bridges and Nick Claxton. So you can go out after that. You can, it could be Tyus Jones. You could go out and get, a mid-level point guard on that team. And so you've got a point guard, whoever. And then you got Desmond Bane, Mikal Bridges, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Nick Claxton. That is size. That is shooting. That is defense. That's a title contender. All 3 of those trades, I think, makes Memphis a title contender, where I think if they have Ja Morant, they are not. So I would be considering what you could get for him if you're Memphis. They probably won't because he's kind of their guy. But, man, I just don't know how much. I don't know how much of that, how much of this headache that they can take. All right, let's end with this. I know I've been rambling a while. Let's end the podcast with the reason I'm doing this pod solo. The Stars are playing in a Game 7 against the Seattle Kraken, with the winner moving on to play Las Vegas in the conference finals. Trent's the hockey expert, not me, so I'm not going to try and break down this matchup. But, man, I just really hope the Stars win. That's all I've got to say. I just really want them to win this game. And all I can hope, I don't know. I'm terrified as a DFW sports fan because all the signs point to the Stars winning. There's all these stats and all this history that the Stars should win this game. They're the better team. But if you're a DFW sports fan like me, that means nothing. We've been raised. Our sports fandom is defined by heartbreak and disappointment. All I can hope for Monday night is that the Stars make it a very competitive game. Well, actually, my first preference is that the Stars blow out the Kraken and it's not even close. But if that can't happen, I want to feel like the Stars had a real shot at winning. I'm really hoping that we finally get a good game from Jason Robertson. You don't have to guess why I'm a fan of his. But man, he's had a rough playoffs. Physicality has it's been too much for him, and I hope we see a stellar Game 7 performance from him. 2 little bets I've placed for the game. Jason Robertson, anytime goal scorer at plus 105, and 1+ goals from Rupe Hintz or Joe Pavelski at minus 185. Let's go Stars. All right, that's going to do it for the podcast. The dad joke this week: I can't take my dog to the pond anymore because the ducks keep attacking him. That's what I get for buying a purebred dog. I don't have any audience here, so it's just you, the lovely listeners. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of Making the Call. I hope everyone got to watch the Stars game. I'm hoping the Stars won. I hope you're listening to this podcast with a smile on your face because the Stars are going to the conference finals. But aside from that, I hope everyone has a fantastic week. Enjoy all the sports. Enjoy Rangers baseball. It's so much fun right now. If you're not watching it, you really should be. It's been a real treat. Everyone have a great week. We'll be back this Friday on the Substack. I will be writing an article about what happened in the NBA draft lottery, how it affects the Mavs, what the Mavs will do, kind of all of that. I'm really hoping the Mavs don't fall to 11 because then there won't be a lot to talk about, but I'll be writing about it nonetheless. So that'll be coming up this Friday on the Substack. We'll be back with the rest of the gang next Monday night for our typical weekly podcast. But until then, I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and we will see you next time.